The oncologist's words still echoed in my head as I sat in my truck outside the medical center, staring at the parking meter that had expired 20 minutes ago. 6 months, maybe 8 if we're aggressive with treatment. Dr. Martinez had delivered the news with the same tone he might use to discuss weekend plans, clinical and detached. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, the kind that doesn't negotiate. I should have called Linda immediately, should have driven straight home to tell the kids. Instead, I found myself parked outside Tommy's Diner, watching normal people live their normal lives through the rain-streaked windshield. A father pushed his daughter on the swing set across the street. She couldn't have been more than 6, her laughter cutting through the October gloom like a blade. My phone buzzed, Linda again. I'd missed 4 calls from her in the past hour. "Where are you?" Her voice was sharp when I finally answered. "Dr. Martinez's office called. They said you left without scheduling your follow-up." "I'm thinking." "Thinking about what, David? You can't just disappear when—" "I have cancer, Linda." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. In the background, I could hear the television and our 17-year-old daughter Jessica arguing with someone about car keys. "What kind?" Linda's voice had gone small. "The bad kind." I hung up and drove home to our split-level house in Meadowbrook, the same suburb where I'd grown up, where my father had worked at the steel plant until it closed, where I'd somehow managed to build a life selling insurance and coaching Little League on weekends. The American dream in beige vinyl siding and a 2-car garage. Linda was waiting in the kitchen, her real estate files spread across the granite countertop we'd splurged on 5 years ago. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw the exact moment the reality hit her. Her face crumpled, then immediately reorganized itself into the competent mask she wore when dealing with difficult clients. "How long?" she asked. 6 to 8 months. She stood up slowly, smoothing her skirt. "What are the treatment options?" I loved her for asking about treatment first, even though we both knew what this meant. Linda had always been practical, the planner in our relationship. While I dreamed about opening a hardware store or coaching high school baseball, she'd built a successful real estate career and managed our investments with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. Chemo might buy some time. Quality of life won't be great. Jessica chose that moment to storm into the kitchen, still arguing into her phone. "Mom, tell Michael I can't drive him to Sarah's party tonight because—" She stopped mid-sentence, looking between us. "What's wrong?" At 17, Jessica had inherited Linda's intuition and my stubborn streak. She was supposed to graduate in the spring, had already been accepted to 3 colleges. University of Michigan was her first choice, the same school where Linda and I had met 22 years ago. "Your father has something to tell you," Linda said. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. When had she gotten so tall? When had she started wearing makeup that made her look like a stranger? "Jessie, I'm sick, really sick." "What kind of sick?" "Cancer." She stared at me for a long moment, then her phone rang. Without breaking eye contact, she declined the call. "Are you going to die?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Linda made a small noise, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "Yeah, kiddo, probably." Jessica nodded once, then walked out of the kitchen. A moment later, I heard her bedroom door slam. "You couldn't have been more gentle?" Linda's voice carried an edge I'd been hearing more often lately. She asked a direct question. I gave her a direct answer. "She's 17, David. She's not a child." Linda began gathering her files with sharp, efficient movements. "Michael's at practice. We'll need to tell him when he gets home." Michael was 15, a sophomore who'd just made varsity basketball. He was everything I'd never been. Naturally athletic, popular, confident in a way that seemed effortless. While Jessica had always been my little shadow, asking endless questions about carburetors to constellation patterns, Michael and I maintained a relationship built mostly on sports statistics and shared silences. Linda. I reached her hand, but she pulled away. I need to make some calls, figure out the insurance situation, see what we're looking at financially. Always practical. It's what had attracted me to her in college, that ability to see 3 moves ahead while I was still figuring out the current play. But now it felt like watching someone discuss funeral arrangements for a person who was still breathing. The front door opened and Michael walked in, gym bag slung over his shoulder, basketball shoes squeaking against the hardwood. He had Linda's dark hair and sharp features, but he'd inherited my height and the broad shoulders that had made me halfway decent at football back in high school. "What's for dinner?" he called out, already heading toward the refrigerator. "Family meeting," Linda announced. "Living room, now." Michael looked between us, his teenage radar apparently picking up the gravity of the situation. Did someone die? "Not yet," I said, which earned me another sharp look from Linda. We gathered in the living room like we had for countless family meetings over the years, budget discussions, vacation planning, the time we'd had to explain why Grandpa Dave couldn't remember our names anymore. I sat in my usual chair, the brown leather recliner that had been my father's before he passed. Linda took the couch, and the kids flanked her like bodyguards. "Your father has been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer," Linda began, slipping into her professional voice. "It's advanced, and the prognosis isn't good." Michael stared at me with an expression I couldn't read. "How long?" 6 to 8 months. He nodded slowly, processing. "What about basketball season? I mean, will you be able to come to games?" The question caught me off guard. Of all the things he could have asked, about treatment, about pain, about what this meant for the family, he wanted to know if I'd be in the stands. "I'll try, buddy." "Okay." He stood up. "Can I go call Coach Martinez? I'm supposed to tell him if anything changes with my family situation." Linda nodded, and he disappeared upstairs. Jessica remained on the couch, staring at her hands. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now, we figure out how to live with this," I said. "No," she looked up, and I saw Linda steel in her eyes. "I mean, what happens to us, to college, to the house?" Linda had clearly been thinking the same thing. "Your father has a good life insurance policy through work. We'll be okay financially." I wanted to object, to say that we shouldn't be discussing money while I was still alive, but the truth was that it mattered. The life insurance would pay off the mortgage and cover Jessica's college tuition. Michael would have money for school too when the time came. It was why I'd kept paying those premiums even when money was tight. "How much?" Jessica asked. "Jessica," Linda's voice carried a warning. "What? We're all thinking it. How much is Dad worth dead?" The question hit like a physical blow. I looked at my daughter, this young woman who was supposed to be worried about prom dates and college essays, and saw someone calculating survival odds. 500,000, I said quietly. She nodded, as if this confirmed something she'd already suspected. "And you make what, like 60,000 a year selling insurance?" "Something like that." "So I'm worth more to you dead than alive." The words came out before I could stop them, and the silence that followed was deafening. Linda's face went white. Jessica looked stricken. "Dad, that's not—" "Isn't it?" I stood up, suddenly needing to move. "You asked about college first, about money, not about treatment or how I'm feeling or whether I'm scared, just about the money." "That's not fair," Linda said. "We're trying to be practical." "Practical?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My father worked 37 years at the steel plant. You know what he said when they told him he was being laid off? He said, 'At least my family will be okay.' And you know what? We weren't. We were broke within 6 months." "This is different," Linda insisted. "Is it? Because it feels like you're already planning my funeral." I walked out of the room, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the garage. Behind me, I could hear Linda calling my name, but I kept walking. The October air was crisp, carrying the smell of burning leaves and the promise of winter. I got in my truck and drove without any destination in mind. I ended up at Riverside Park, where I'd played baseball as a kid, where I taught both Jessica and Michael to throw a curveball. The fields were empty now, the grass yellowing and overgrown. I sat on the bleachers and tried to remember what it felt like to believe that hard work and good intentions were enough to build a life worth living. My phone rang. Jessica. Dad, where are you? Thinking. Come home, please. In a while. Dad. Her voice was small now, nothing like the calculating teenager from the living room. I'm sorry. About what I said. You weren't wrong, kiddo. Yes, I was. I was scared, and I said something stupid. Come home. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind moving through the empty stands. What do you want to be when you grow up, Jesse? What? When you were little, you wanted to be a veterinarian, then an astronaut, then a teacher like Mrs. Henderson. What do you want now? She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. I don't know. I thought I had time to figure it out. You do have time, but you don't. The truth of it settled between us like snow. No, I don't. I don't want you to die. I don't want to die either. Then fight it. Do the chemo. Do whatever it takes. I thought about Dr. Martinez's explanation of the treatment protocol. Months of being sick, of vomiting and losing my hair, and feeling like a ghost of myself, all for the chance of maybe, possibly, extending my life by a few weeks. It's not that simple. Why not? How do you explain to your 17-year-old daughter that sometimes fighting only prolongs the suffering? That sometimes the bravest thing is knowing when to let go? Come home, Dad. We'll figure it out together. I drove home through the darkening streets of Meadowbrook, past the houses where my neighbors were probably sitting down to dinner, helping with homework, arguing about curfews and chores. Normal problems, normal lives. Linda was in the kitchen when I walked in, standing at the sink with her back to me. Her shoulders were shaking. Lynn? She turned around, and I saw that she'd been crying. Linda never cried, not even when her mother died 2 years ago. I can't do this, she whispered. I crossed the kitchen and took her in my arms. She felt smaller than I remembered, fragile in a way that scared me. I've been thinking about money because I don't know how to think about losing you, she said into my chest. It's easier to worry about college tuition than to imagine sleeping alone for the rest of my life. I held her tighter. I know. Do you remember our wedding day? You promised me 50 years. I remember. We've only had 22. 22 good years. She pulled back to look at me. Most of them. I laughed despite everything. Most of them. We'd had our rough patches, like any couple. The year after Michael was born, when we barely spoke to each other. The financial stress when I'd tried to start my own agency and failed. The arguments about disciplining the kids, about Linda's long hours, about my tendency to retreat into silence when things got difficult. What do we tell people? She asked. It was such a Linda question, already thinking about the social logistics of dying. The neighbors, her clients, my coworkers, the parents at school functions. We tell them the truth. I don't know how to do this, David. I don't know how to watch you die. You don't have to watch. You can live. Keep selling houses, keep taking care of the kids, keep being Linda Morrison. Linda Morrison who lost her husband to cancer. Linda Morrison who raised 2 amazing kids and built a successful career and figured out how to be happy again. She shook her head. I don't want to be happy again. I want to be happy now with you. The kids appeared in the kitchen doorway, drawn by our voices. Michael still had his basketball in his hands, as if he'd been shooting hoops in the driveway. Jessica looked like she'd been crying too. Group hug, Michael suggested, which was so unlike him that we all laughed. We stood in the kitchen holding each other, and for a moment it felt like we might actually be okay, like love might be enough to get us through this. Then Linda's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and sighed. it's the Hendersons, about the Patterson house closing. She looked at me apologetically. I have to take this. And just like that, life resumed. Linda walked into the living room to handle her client's crisis. Michael announced he had homework and disappeared upstairs. Jessica lingered for a moment, then followed her brother. I stood alone in the kitchen, listening to Linda's professional voice discussing mortgage rates and inspection reports, and realized that this was what the next 6 months would look like. Life continuing around my dying, people adapting and moving forward, because that's what people do. The next few weeks settled into a routine that felt both surreal and depressingly normal. I started the chemo treatments, which made me feel like I was being slowly poisoned from the inside out. Linda threw herself into work with an intensity that bordered on mania, staying late at the office and taking on new clients like she was trying to build a fortress out of real estate commissions. Jessica became the family caretaker, making sure I took my medications, driving me to appointments when Linda couldn't, researching clinical trials on the internet with the single-minded focus she usually reserved for studying for exams. Michael handled it by pretending nothing had changed, talking about basketball season and asking if I wanted to play catch in the backyard, even though we both knew I barely had the energy to walk to the mailbox. It was during the 3rd week of treatment that the money conversation started in earnest. I was lying on the couch, recovering from a particularly brutal chemo session, when I overheard Linda on the phone with her sister Carol. "The life insurance will cover the mortgage and the kids' education," she was saying, "but I'm worried about the medical bills. Even with insurance, we're looking at significant out-of-pocket expenses." I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep, but I could hear every word. "No, Carol, I can't ask him to stop treatment. But honestly, the doctor says it might only give him a few extra weeks, and the quality of life." Her voice trailed off. "I know it sounds horrible, but I keep thinking about Jessica's college fund. If the medical bills eat up our savings." I felt something cold settle in my chest that had nothing to do with the cancer. Later that evening, Jessica approached me with a folder full of printouts. "Dad, I've been researching experimental treatments. There's a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins that—" "Jessie, stop. Just listen. They're using a new immunotherapy protocol that's showing promising results in pancreatic cancer patients." "How much does it cost?" She hesitated. "It's experimental, so insurance might not cover it. But Dad, if there's a chance—" "How much?" "Probably around $50,000, maybe more." I looked at my daughter, this bright, determined young woman who was trying to save my life with printouts and determination, and felt my heart break a little more. "That's your college tuition. I can take out loans. I can go to community college for 2 years and transfer. Dad, we're talking about your life. And I'm talking about yours." The argument that followed was bitter and painful. Jessica accused me of giving up, of choosing death over fighting for my family. I tried to explain that sometimes love means making hard choices, that sometimes protecting the people you care about means accepting the unacceptable. "You're being selfish," she said finally, tears streaming down her face. "Probably. Then why won't you try?" Because I'd done the math. Because $50,000 for a few extra months of pain wasn't a good investment. Because I'd rather my daughter graduate from college debt-free than remember me as the father who bankrupted the family trying to squeeze out a few more weeks of life. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I told her I'd think about it. That night, I lay awake listening to Linda's breathing and thinking about my father. Had died when I was 28, a heart attack at the steel plant that took him quickly and without warning. I'd envied him that sudden exit, the way he'd avoided the long, slow decline that I was facing. But now I wondered if quick was really better, if maybe having time to say goodbye, to arrange things, to make sure everyone would be okay, was actually a gift. The problem was that no one seemed to want my version of okay. Michael came to me a few days later while I was sitting in the garage, supposedly organizing my tools, but really just trying to find a place where I could be sick without an audience. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Sure, buddy." He sat down on my workbench, swinging his legs like he used to do when he was little. "Are you going to do that treatment Jessica found?" "I don't know yet. She's been crying a lot." I looked at my son, who was trying so hard to be the man of the family, while I was still alive to see it. "What do you think I should do?" He was quiet for a long time, staring at his shoes. "I think you should do whatever makes you happy. What makes me happy is knowing you and Jessica will be okay after I'm gone." "We will be. Even without the experimental treatment?" He nodded. "Mom's tough. Jessica's smart. I'm okay at basketball." He looked up at me with a small smile. "We'll figure it out." It was the most grown-up thing anyone had said to me since the diagnosis. That evening, Linda found me in the garage and sat down beside me on the old couch I'd rescued from a garage sale years ago. "The Henderson closing fell through," she said. "I'm sorry." "It's fine. These things happen." She was quiet for a moment. "David, about the experimental treatment, you think I should do it?" "I think you should do whatever you want to do." I studied her face, looking for some sign of what she really thought. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to not have cancer. I want us to go back to arguing about whose turn it is to take out the garbage and whether we can afford to replace the roof." She sighed. "But since I can't have that, I want you to make the choice that lets you sleep at night. What if that choice is letting go?" She took my hand. "Then I'll try to understand." We sat in the garage in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of our neighborhood settling into evening. Dogs barking, televisions humming, the distant sound of kids playing basketball in someone's driveway. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Regret what?" "Marrying me, having kids so young, staying in Meadowbrook instead of taking that job in Chicago." She turned to look at me. "Do you?" "No, not for a second." "Then why would I?" "Because you could have done anything, been anything. I became a wife and mother and businesswoman in a town where I matter. I built a life with someone I love, raised 2 kids who are going to change the world in their own small ways." She squeezed my hand. "What else is there?" The next morning, I called Dr. Martinez and told him I wouldn't be pursuing the experimental treatment. The chemo was doing more harm than good, and I wanted to focus on quality of life for whatever time I had left. He was understanding, but not surprised. "Palliative care can help with pain management. Hospice services when you're ready." "How long without treatment?" "Hard to say. Could be weeks, could be a few months." I thanked him and hung up. Linda took the news with the composure I'd expected. Jessica did not. "You're giving up," she said, her voice shaking with anger and disappointment. "I'm choosing how I want to spend my time." "You're choosing to die." "I'm choosing to live for whatever time I have left." She stormed out of the house, and I didn't see her for 3 days. She stayed with friends, ignoring our calls and texts. On the 4th day, she came home and found me in the backyard, sitting in a lawn chair and watching the sunset. "I've been thinking," she said, sitting down in the grass beside my chair. "Yeah?" "About what you said, about choosing how to spend your time." I waited. "I want to spend it with you, not in hospitals and doctors' offices, but here, at home." "What about school?" "I can do my coursework from home, graduate early if I need to." "Jessica." "Dad, I'm 17 years old. In a few months, I'll be in college, starting my own life. This is my last chance to really spend time with you. Don't take that away from me." I looked at my daughter, this fierce, brilliant young woman who was offering to sacrifice her senior year to sit with her dying father, and felt something break open in my chest. "Okay," I said, "but you're still going to Michigan in the fall." "Deal." Michael's response was different but equally generous. He started coming straight home after basketball practice instead of hanging out with friends. He'd sit with me while I watched the games I was too tired to attend, providing play-by-play commentary and inside jokes about his teammates. "Coach says I might get a scholarship," he told me one evening. "Not a full ride, but something." "That's great, buddy." "He says I have good court vision, that I see plays developing before they happen." You get that from your mother. He laughed. Yeah, probably. Michael? Yeah? Whatever happens with basketball, with college, with your life, just remember that being a good person matters more than being successful. He looked at me seriously. I know, Dad. Do you? Yeah, you taught me that. As winter settled over Meadowbrook, I found myself paying attention to small things I'd never noticed before. The way the morning light hit the kitchen window, the sound of Linda's laugh when she talked to her clients, the careful way Jessica made my tea, always adding exactly the right amount of honey. The pain was getting worse, but the hospice nurse, a woman named Ruth who had the gentlest hands I'd ever experienced, helped manage it with a combination of medications and practical wisdom. The hardest part isn't dying, she told me during one of her visits. It's watching the people you love learn to live without you. She was right. Linda had started staying home more, turning down evening appointments and weekend showings. She'd found an associate to handle some of her clients, something she'd never been willing to do before. You don't have to babysit me, I told her. I'm not babysitting. I'm spending time with my husband. Linda, David, I've worked 60-hour weeks for 15 years. I've missed school plays and basketball games and family dinners because I was showing houses or writing contracts. I don't want to miss this. You might get bored. She smiled. Then I'll read a book. Or we'll watch those old movies you're always talking about. Or you can teach me how to use that table saw you've been promising to show me for 10 years. So that's what we did. I taught Linda how to measure twice and cut once, how to sand with the grain, how to choose the right bit for the right job. She was surprisingly good at it, approaching woodworking with the same methodical precision she brought to real estate contracts. Together, we built a bookshelf for Jessica's dorm room. Nothing fancy, just a simple pine piece that would hold her textbooks and the collection of science fiction novels she'd been accumulating since middle school. She's going to cry when she sees this, Linda said, running her hand over the smooth finish. Good tears or bad tears? Both. Jessica did cry when we presented it to her. She hugged both of us and then spent an hour arranging and rearranging her books on the shelves, trying to find the perfect configuration. It's beautiful, Dad. Your mom did most of the work. No, he did, Linda corrected. I just followed instructions. I watched them banter about who deserved credit and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what I wanted to leave behind, not a tragic story about a man who died too young, but evidence that we'd built something good together, something that would last. Christmas came and went quietly. We'd always been a modest family when it came to holidays, more focused on time together than expensive gifts. This year felt even more precious because we all knew it was likely my last. I gave Linda a photo album I'd been working on for months, filled with pictures from our 22 years together. College graduation, our wedding, the kids as babies, family vacations, birthday parties, ordinary Tuesday evenings. The visual story of a life well lived. She gave me a leather journal. For your thoughts, she said, whatever you want to leave behind. Jessica presented me with a playlist she'd created full of songs that reminded her of me. Everything from Beatles classics I'd played on repeat during her childhood to newer artists she'd discovered and thought I'd like. Michael's gift was simpler but perhaps the most meaningful. He gave me a basketball signed by his entire team, including a note from Coach Martinez thanking me for my support over the years. This was supposed to be for the regional championship, Michael explained, but I figured you should have it now. What if you make it to regionals? Then we'll get a new ball. By February, I was spending most of my days in the hospital bed Ruth had set up in our living room. The view from there included the front window, where I could watch the neighborhood kids walking to school, the mail carrier making his rounds, the subtle changes that marked winter's slow retreat towards spring. Linda had taken a leave of absence from work. Her business partner, a woman named Susan, who'd been trying to get Linda to slow down for years, was handling her clients and depositing Linda's commission checks with instructions to take care of David and stop worrying about everything else. I could get used to being a lady of leisure, Linda joked, but I could see the restlessness in her eyes. She was a woman who needed projects, purposes, problems to solve. Watching me die wasn't enough to keep her busy. "You should go back to work," I told her one afternoon. "Absolutely not. Just a few hours a day. Show a house or two. Susan needs help with the Morrison account. Susan can handle it. Linda, you're going to drive yourself crazy sitting here all day. I'm exactly where I want to be." But I knew her better than that. Linda needed to feel useful, productive, essential. So I started giving her projects. Researching colleges for Michael, even though he was only a sophomore. Planning Jessica's graduation party. Organizing my papers and files so she'd know where everything was. "You're managing me," she said one day, but she was smiling. Is it working? Unfortunately, yes. Jessica had decided to defer college for a year, despite our arguments against it. She wanted to travel, she said, to see the world before settling into the serious business of adult life. I suspected she really wanted to be available to help Linda adjust to widowhood, but I didn't push the issue. Jessica had always been stubborn, and fighting with her took energy I didn't have. "Where will you go?" I asked her. "Europe, maybe. Sarah's sister is studying in London. She says I could stay with her for a while." "That sounds expensive." "I've been saving my babysitting money for 3 years. Plus, Mom said she'd help." I looked at Linda, who shrugged. It's her graduation present. We were spoiling them, I realized, using my impending death as an excuse to say yes to things we might normally question. But maybe that was okay. Maybe there were worse ways to spend your last few months than making your children happy. By March, the pain was requiring stronger medications that left me foggy and distant. I'd have good days and bad days, moments of clarity mixed with stretches where everything felt like it was happening underwater. On one of the good days, I asked Linda to help me write letters. What kind of letters? For the kids, for later. She understood immediately. What do you want to say? We spent the afternoon crafting messages for future milestones. Jessica's college graduation, her wedding, the birth of her first child. Michael's 18th birthday, his high school graduation, his wedding day. Letters for Linda too, for the first anniversary without me, for the day she might decide to start dating again, for her 60th birthday. This is morbid, Linda said, but she kept writing. This is planning. Same thing. I watched her careful handwriting fill page after page with my words, my hopes for their futures, my love for who they were and who they might become. It was exhausting work, trying to distill a lifetime of parenting into a few paragraphs, but it felt important. What if they don't want to read them? Linda asked. Then they don't read them, but they'll know they're there. What if I forget to give them to them? You won't forget. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. How do you know? Because you're Linda Morrison, and you don't forget important things. The letters went into a safety deposit box at the bank, along with my will and the other documents that would matter after I was gone. Linda handled the logistics with her typical efficiency, but I could see the toll it was taking. You don't have to do this alone, I told her. Do what alone? Take care of everything. The kids, the house, the future. You can ask for help. From who? Your sister, my brother, the neighbors. People want to help Linda. You just have to let them. She nodded, but I wasn't sure she believed me. Linda had always been self-reliant, sometimes to a fault. Learning to accept help from others would be one of her biggest challenges. In early April, Ruth sat down with all of us to talk about what the final weeks might look like. It was a difficult conversation, full of medical terms and practical considerations that nobody wanted to hear, but everyone needed to understand. The most important thing, Ruth said, is to keep talking to him, even if he seems unconscious. Hearing is often the last sense to go. Jessica asked about pain management. Michael wanted to know about timing. Linda focused on logistics, who to call, what arrangements needed to be made, and how to handle the immediate aftermath. Are there things you want to say to each other? Ruth asked gently. We'd been having those conversations all along, but somehow her question gave us permission to be more direct. "I'm proud of both of you," I told the kids. "Not just for your accomplishments, but for who you are. Your kindness, your strength, your ability to find joy even in difficult circumstances." "Dad," Jessica started. "Let me finish. Jessica, you have your mother's intelligence and her determination, but you also have a compassion that's uniquely yours. Use it. The world needs people who care as much as you do." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Michael, you have a gift for seeing people clearly, for understanding what they need even when they can't express it themselves. That's going to serve you well, whatever you decide to do with your life." "Thanks, Dad." "And Linda," I turned to my wife, this woman who had been my partner in everything for over 2 decades. "You've been the best part of my life, the absolute best part. Everything good that I am, I learned from loving you." She couldn't speak, just took my hand and held it tight. The conversation continued for another hour, with each of us sharing memories, expressing gratitude, saying things that might be difficult to say later. It felt both heartbreaking and healing, this formal acknowledgement of what we were about to lose and what we would always keep. By the end of April, I was sleeping more than I was awake. The medications kept the pain manageable, but made everything else feel distant and unclear. I could hear conversations happening around me, could sense the presence of my family, but participating became increasingly difficult. Linda had moved a cot into the living room so she could sleep near me. Jessica and Michael took turns sitting with me during the day, reading aloud or just talking about their plans and thoughts. "I got into Michigan," Jessica told me during one of my more alert moments. "Early admission to the honors program." I smiled, or tried to. "That's wonderful, kiddo." "I'm still taking the gap year, but it's good to know I'll have a spot when I'm ready." "Your mother's proud of you." "Are you proud of me?" "Every day." Michael's news was different but equally good. "Coach says there's already some college scouts interested in watching me play next year. Nothing definite, but it's promising." "What do you think about that?" "I think it's cool. But Dad, I've been thinking about maybe studying engineering too. Like sports medicine engineering, designing better equipment for athletes." I felt a surge of pride and love so strong it was almost overwhelming. "That sounds perfect." "Yeah?" "Yeah. Find something you love that also helps people. That's the secret to a good life." May brought warm weather and the end of the school year. Jessica graduated as valedictorian, an achievement that would have prompted a major celebration in normal circumstances. Instead, we had a quiet dinner at home, just the 4 of us, with a cake from the grocery store bakery, and cards from extended family who understood that this might be our last celebration together. "I almost lost it when I talked about the importance of family support," Jessica admitted. "I kept looking at the empty chair where Dad was supposed to be sitting." I'd watched the ceremony on Linda's phone, propped up against pillows in my hospital bed. Even through the small screen, I could see Jessica's composure falter slightly when she mentioned the people who had helped shape her into the person she'd become. "I was there," I said weakly, "just not in the way we planned." "I know, Dad." The days began blending together after that. I'd drift in and out of consciousness, sometimes waking to find Linda reading beside me, sometimes opening my eyes to see Michael doing homework at the kitchen table, sometimes surfacing from deep sleep to hear Jessica talking on the phone with her friends about summer plans and college preparations. "I was there," I said weakly, "just not in the way we planned." "I know, Dad." The days began blending together after that. I'd drift in and out of consciousness, sometimes waking to find Linda reading beside me, sometimes opening my eyes to see Michael doing homework at the kitchen table, sometimes surfacing from deep sleep to hear Jessica talking on the phone with her friends about summer plans and college preparations. Dr. Martinez made house calls now, checking my vitals and adjusting medications with the gentle efficiency I'd come to appreciate. During one visit, he pulled Linda aside for a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear, but did anyway. "It could be any time now," he said quietly. "Days, maybe a week or two. His body is shutting down." "Is he in pain?" "The medications are managing that. He's comfortable." "Will we know when it's happening?" "Usually there are signs. Changes in breathing, periods of unresponsiveness. Ruth will guide you through it." I wanted to comfort Linda, to tell her it was okay, that I wasn't afraid anymore. But the words felt too heavy to lift, too complicated to arrange into something coherent. Instead, I focused on listening, to the sound of my family moving through the house, continuing their lives around my dying. Linda on the phone with clients, her voice professional and reassuring even as she dealt with her own crisis. Jessica practicing her Spanish pronunciation for the trip to Europe she'd planned for the fall. Michael shooting baskets in the driveway, the rhythmic bounce and swish that had been the soundtrack of our evenings for years. These were the sounds I wanted to take with me, the evidence of life continuing, of love persisting even in the face of loss. One evening in late May, I woke from a deep sleep to find all three of them gathered around my bed. Linda was holding my left hand, Jessica my right. Michael sat cross-legged on the floor beside me, close enough that I could have reached out and touched his shoulder if I'd had the strength. "Hey, Dad," Jessica said softly, "we're all here." I tried to speak but couldn't manage it. Instead, I squeezed her hand as hard as I could, which wasn't very hard at all. "We've been talking," Linda said, "about everything, about you, about us, about what comes next." I looked at her face, trying to memorize every detail. The laugh lines around her eyes, the stubborn cowlick that made her hair stick up in the morning, the small scar on her chin from a childhood bicycle accident. "We're going to be okay," she continued. "I know you're worried about us, but we're going to be okay." "Jessica's going to study abroad like she planned," Michael added. "And I'm going to keep playing basketball, maybe get that scholarship Coach talks about. And I'm going to sell some houses and figure out how to be on my own," Linda said. "Not because I want to, but because that's what you'd want me to do." I felt tears on my cheeks, though I wasn't sure if they were from sadness or relief or some combination of both. "We love you, Dad," Jessica whispered, "so much." I wanted to tell them I loved them too, wanted to say all the things I'd been saving for this moment, but the words wouldn't come, and maybe that was okay. Maybe after 22 years of marriage and 17 and 15 years of being a father, the words weren't necessary anymore. Instead, I closed my eyes and listened to them talk. About memories, about plans, about the small details of daily life that would continue after I was gone. Jessica would start her senior year classes online while traveling through Europe. Michael would try out for varsity basketball as a junior. Linda would take on the Patterson development project she'd been considering. Life would go on. They would grieve, but they would also laugh and argue and celebrate and build new memories. They would think of me sometimes, but they wouldn't be defined by losing me. As I drifted back toward sleep, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Not the kind that comes from giving up, but the kind that comes from knowing you've done your job well. I'd raised 2 good kids with a woman I loved in a place that mattered to us, building something small but real and lasting. The cancer might have shortened my time, but it hadn't diminished what we'd accomplished together. 50 years would have been better, but 22 good years was nothing to regret. I thought about the life insurance money that would pay for Jessica's education and Michael's future, about the letters waiting in the safety deposit box, about the bookshelf Linda and I had built together. Small legacies, practical gifts, evidence of love translated into action. My breathing grew slower and more labored over the next few days. Ruth increased my medication to keep me comfortable, and my family took turns sitting with me, holding my hands, talking to me about everything and nothing. Linda read me articles from the local newspaper, updating me on the neighborhood gossip and municipal politics I'd always found oddly comforting. Jessica shared college brochures and travel plans, describing the places she wanted to see and the things she hoped to learn. Michael talked about basketball, about his teammates and coaches, about the possibility of playing in college someday. They were giving me the gift of their futures, letting me imagine the lives they would build after I was gone. It was the best possible goodbye. On a Tuesday morning in early June, I opened my eyes to see Linda sitting beside me, her hair caught in the morning light streaming through our bedroom window. She'd moved me back to our room the day before, saying she wanted me to be in the place where we'd spent so many nights together. "Good morning," she said softly. I tried to smile, managed something that felt close enough. "The kids are at school. It's just us." Just us. The way it had been at the beginning, when we were young and foolish and certain we had all the time in the world. "I need you to know something," she said, leaning closer. "This has been the best 22 years of my life. Every year, every month, every day. Even the hard ones. Even this one." I wanted to tell her the same thing, but the words were beyond my reach now. "I'm going to miss you every day for the rest of my life," she continued. "But I'm also going to live every day for the rest of my life. Because that's what you'd want. Because that's what love looks like." She kissed my forehead, her lips warm and familiar. "Thank you," she whispered, "for choosing me, for staying with me, for giving me Jessica and Michael and this life we built together." I closed my eyes and felt myself letting go, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Gratitude for Linda's love, for my children's strength, for the ordinary miracle of a life well lived in an unremarkable place with remarkable people. The last thing I heard was Linda humming softly, a song I recognized but couldn't name, something beautiful and sad and full of love. 3 months later, Linda would drive Jessica to the airport for her flight to London, both of them crying and laughing as they said goodbye. 6 months later, she would watch Michael score 18 points in his first varsity game, cheering from the stands where I should have been sitting. A year later, she would go on her first date since becoming a widow, with a kind man named Tom who understood that loving someone new doesn't mean forgetting someone old. Jessica would graduate from the University of Michigan with honors and a degree in veterinary medicine, exactly as she dreamed when she was 7 years old. She would marry a fellow veterinarian named David, not because of his name, but because he shared her passion for helping animals and her belief that kindness matters more than success. Michael would earn a partial basketball scholarship to a small college in Ohio where he would study biomedical engineering and design equipment that would help injured athletes return to the sports they loved. He would think of me every time he solved a problem, remembering my advice about finding work that helped people. Linda would build her real estate business into one of the most successful agencies in 3 counties, not because she needed the money, but because she discovered she loved helping families find homes, almost as she'd loved building one with me. They would all visit my grave on Father's Day and my birthday, bringing stories and updates and the occasional argument about who was responsible for keeping the flowers fresh. They would remember me not as the man who died of cancer, but as the husband and father who loved them completely and taught them that even in the face of loss, life is beautiful and worth living. But I wouldn't know any of that as I slipped away on that Tuesday morning in June, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived and the promise of love that would outlast even death itself.